The 2024 Pro Football Hall of Fame class has been decided. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2024 this year will only consist of 7 members and not 9. And it makes you wonder, why did these other 2 guys even get nominated? Why did they even go that far to extending a Hall of Fame class if 2 of the guys just aren't going to get nominated? So, for one of the guys, which was the contributor finalist, it was Buddy Parker. He was an old Detroit Lions, Cardinals, and Steelers head coach. And what other guy was Art Powell, who was an old AFL wide receiver. Didn't make the cut. But there's 7 other guys that did. If you remember 2 years ago, I was not so fond of Bryant Young making the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they leave out more deserving guys like a DeMarcus Ware, like a Patrick Willis, or like a... And here we are 2 years later where I'm not sure if Andre Johnson had better stats than Antonio Gates. But don't even get me wrong. I despise the Chargers. They're up there as one of my most... when I was a teenager growing up watching football, in my division, they were my most hated team. My most hated team growing up was the Patriots. But when the Chargers had Rivers, LT, and Gates, they were my most hated team in the division. They could still be if they were still some sort of relevancy, but since they fell to irrelevancy, I just don't hate them as much. They're not my most hated team in the division no more. That goes to KC. And I love the fact that they blew the 27-point lead, but Antonio Gates was well Hall of Fame worthy. So, I take a look at this class, and there's a lot of guys that really are Hall of Fame worthy. The first guy that comes to my mind was the first year eligible man that was going to headline this class, and that was Julius Peppers. Julius Peppers was a former defensive end, outside linebacker. Depends on what kind of system you put him in. If he's in a 4-3, he's a defensive end. 3-4, he's an outside linebacker. He spent 2002 to 2009 with Carolina, 2010 to 13 with Chicago, went to Green Bay from 14 to 16, then he went back to Carolina to play his last 2 seasons. This was Julius Peppers' resume. 2002 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Was a 4-time first-team All-Pro, 9-time Pro Bowl selection, part of 2 all-decade teams, the 2000s and 2010s. He had 719 career tackles, 159.5 career sacks, 82 pass deflections, 11 interceptions, 52 forced fumbles, and 6 defensive touchdowns. And he was truly the first great Carolina Panther. You could say Sam Mills, but Mills was just not a Panther. He will be probably most remembered as a Saint. But Julius Peppers was definitely the guy who was going to headline this class. Then you had, Dwight Freeney. Spent 2002 to 2012 with Indianapolis, 13 and 14 with San Diego, 15 with Arizona, 16 with Atlanta. Or I think he was just a backup for the team that blew the 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. And he split time in 2017 in Seattle and Detroit. He was a Super Bowl 41 champion. And if there's a Super Bowl champion that gets well underrepresented in the Hall of Fame, it's Indianapolis' 2016. They got Peyton Manning. They got Tony Dungy. They got Bill Polian and Marvin Harrison. Now, they got to put a couple of more guys, and at least probably 3 more well-deserving guys, and that is Jeff Saturday, Reggie Wayne, and Robert Mathis. Okay, he was a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. He led the league in sacks in 2004. He was the forced fumbles leader in 2002. His rookie season, he was a part of the 2000s All-Decade team, had 332 career tackles, 125.5 sacks, 47 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 17 pass deflections, and had 1 defensive touchdown. That right there is Hall of Fame all around. The fact that he appeared in like 3 Super Bowls, won one of them, and he's a legend in Indianapolis, they definitely have to put him in. Then you have Devin Hester, who has to be the greatest return man of all time. In 2009, when NFL Network did their all-time return aces, he ranked number 1 in return aces. I mean, the fact that he broke Brian Mitchell's record in only 2 seasons says it all. He played his first 8 with Chicago from 2006 to 13, 14 and 15 with Atlanta, and he split time in 2016 with Baltimore and Seattle. He's a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time kick return yardage leader. He's a 2-time punt return yardage leader, 3-time alumni and special team player of the year, was a part of the 2000s and 2010s All-Decade team, just like Dwight Freeney, and he's a part of the 100th anniversary team. And you look at his stats as a return man. We're not going to go receiver because he went in as a return man. He had 7,333 kick return yards, 3,696 punt return yards, 5 kick return touchdowns, and 14 punt return touchdowns. He is just phenomenal. Then you got Patrick Willis, who spent his whole 8-year career with San Francisco. He was the 2007 Defensive Rookie of the Year, 5-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowl selection. He led the league twice in tackles. He was a part of the 2000s All-Decade team, had 950 career tackles, 20 and a half career sacks, 8 interceptions, 16 forced fumbles, and 2 touchdowns in his career. Patrick Willis was one of the best linebackers in I think in his career he was the best in his time period, because remember, he came to the NFL when Ray Lewis started to wind down. So Patrick Willis was by far the best linebacker. He was a brick wall hitter. He played great in coverage. Those 8 interceptions say it all. And I remember his rookie year when he made that big old tackle against Arizona when he was so far away from the receiver. I don't remember who the receiver for Arizona was, but he put up the gear and went and tackled that receiver. So that was good right there. And Patrick Willis, he's a guy that, a lot of people thought the short NFL career might hurt him. But you know what? Kudos to him for making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, like I said, you deny Antonio Gates the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility, but you're going to put in Andre Johnson. He played for all but one AFC South team, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars. He played his first 12 seasons with Houston from 03 to 14, 15 with Indy, and 16 with Tennessee. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowl selection, 2-time receiving leader, 2-time receiving yards leader, had 1,062 career receptions, 14,185 yards, and he averaged 13.4 receiving yards per reception and had 70 career touchdowns. He right there, for as great as he was, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve the Hall of Fame, but you're going to put him over Antonio Gates? Come on, Antonio Gates was one of the, let's put it this way. Wide receivers, when Andre Johnson played, wide receivers were expected to put up these numbers. And the tight end position at that time flourished. It became so big, even though the receivers were the thing. But I would be putting in Antonio Gates way before I would put in Andre Johnson. Take nothing away from Andre Johnson, but come on. Antonio Gates deserved this award more than did Andre Johnson. Take nothing away from Andre again, but come on. I just do not see how you could deny Antonio Gates, when he was arguably the best tight end of his time, and yet you keep Andre Johnson in there. You induct Andre Johnson, which, if you ask me, I would put in Antonio Gates before Andre Johnson. And that's coming from a guy who hated Antonio Gates. Then you had the senior finalists. Only 2 of the 3 made it, and the contributor finalists didn't make it. That one was Randy Gradishar. And it's like I say, for a team that gets a franchise that has been so underrepresented in the Hall of Fame, that's the Denver Broncos. I mean, Randy Gradishar was one of the first ever true great Broncos. The Broncos are just one of those teams that historically were known for both great offenses and defenses. I mean, you're not like the Steelers that were always known more for their great defenses and like the Bears, or you're not like the 49ers or Packers that were always known for your great offenses. You're kind of known for both. And when you don't have that many guys representing this franchise in the Hall of Fame, that's where we have problems. I mean, he played from 74 to 83 with the Broncos. He was the 1978 Defensive Player of the Year, was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, had 2,049 career tackles, 19 and a half sacks, and 4 touchdowns. And remember, those 19 and a half sacks he did in his last 2 seasons, 82 and 83, because it wasn't until 82 when the NFL recognized a sack as an official statistic. And it's because, which I think is so terrible, because sacks are like my favorite thing to see in the NFL. So, and then the last one that made it was Steve McMichael, which, as you know, he suffers from ALS. He doesn't have much life to live, and I hope he lives long enough to see himself being enshrined in the Hall of Fame in the next 6 months. Steve McMichael was also a coach in, I forget which league, but he was also a professional wrestler. As you know, he played his first season with the Patriots. Then he went to Chicago for the next 13, where he just flourished, a part of the Bears' 46 defense. And he committed treason by spending his last year with the Green Bay Packers. Steve McMichael was a Super Bowl 20 champion, a part of the legendary 85 Bears, was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowl selection, had 847 career tackles, 95 career sacks, 3 safeties, 13 forced fumbles, 17 fumble recoveries, and just 1 interception. And as I looked at Pro Football Reference, they have him 24th on defensive tackles, and it's probably because he has a lack of Pro Bowls and a lack of first-team All-Pros, which other guys have it. I mean, the thing about it, too, is Steve McMichael was a guy who definitely deserves it. And if you talk about a team now, not a franchise is like the Broncos. You talk about the history of the football team. You're talking about one team for one season. We want to argue that the 85 Bears were the greatest team ever and the greatest defense ever. They're the greatest defense ever. They are well underrepresented in the Hall of Fame. Only Mike Singletary, Super Bowl 20 MVP Richard Dent, and Dan Hampton, at this point, were the only 3 members of that Pro Football Hall of Fame. Then you put in Steve McMichael to make it 4. And the other Hall of Famers were, of course, Mike Ditka, but he got in as a player, Walter Payton, and Jim Covert. But it's like who was the center. But it's like I say, if you want to say this was the greatest defense of all time, they should have more Hall of Famers than who they have, like Wilbur Marshall. And and I'm not advocating for a guy like William the Refrigerator Perry to get in the Hall of Fame. No, you're talking about the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Publicity, about the players that just got publicity because of who they were. Because remember, William the Refrigerator Perry was okay as a defensive tackle, but he did a lot on the offense when he ran in touchdowns. So, but I'm glad to see Steve McMichael get in, and it's like I say, hopefully he's old enough to see it. So it's like I say, you're going to deny Antonio Gates the Hall of Fame, and you look at next year's class, it's going to be wet. This year, it was Next year's class, it's going to be competitive. You're going to have I can't even think of all the people they're going to have going in, like Eli Manning, I mean, yeah, many people argue he's not a Hall of Famer, but those 2 Super Bowl championships will help his case. And then you're going to have like Earl Thomas, Terrell Suggs. So many guys that will make great cases for 2025. What did you think about this year's Pro Football Hall of Fame class? Do you think Antonio Gates deserved it more than Andre Johnson? Do you think Buddy Parker and Art Powell should have got in this year as well? Let me know in the comment section below. This is David. I'm out. Peace.